Imagine having a six-figure launch because your mind and body and soul feel safe that it can operate at its best and most sophisticated. When we have an advisor or a mentor that has these certain talents and gifts to not only channel spirit guides, but also has the expertise in astrology and in human design to help guide us in our business decisions, anything is possible. Today, I have a special guest who is actually our resident astrologer inside Manifestation Lab. She delivers a monthly astrology forecast and Q&A call for our members. And that is the lovely Katherine Wehler. We're going to chat all about human design, astrology, and business. So keep on listening. Hey, you. Your next level of expansion is here. And you're not going to accomplish it through hustle and grind. Oh no, not you. You allow ease and flow to come through you so that you can manifest the business of your dreams. Welcome to the Aligned Businesswoman podcast, where you get to be in flow and allow your strategic CEO to meet your inner goddess. This is the podcast for female entrepreneurs who want to strengthen their intuition muscle while applying simple and practical business growth strategies to accelerate it. We'll combine energetics and strategy along with human design and your gene keys to optimize your business performance and results. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Aligned Businesswoman podcast. Vanessa here. Today I have a very special guest, and she's special because she is the co-host of Manifestation Lab. Katherine Wehler is our resident astrologist who delivers a monthly astrology forecast. She is a new paradigm business and soul coach committed to guiding heart-centered leaders to create and truly anchor in heaven on earth in real time. She uses her 20 plus years as an astrologer, human design skills, and access to the Akashic records to help her high caliber clients create a lasting impact and legacy of love. I am honored that she is the co-host of the Manifestation Lab. So let's dive into our interview.
Welcome to another episode of the Aligned Businesswoman podcast. I have a special guest with me today, Katherine Wehler, and we're going to be talking all about human design, astrology, manifestation, and all the fun stuff. Thank you, Katherine, for being here. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and just allowing this to flow, because I know that you and I have the same type of let's just have fun. So I trust that this is going to be a fun conversation. So before we get started, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with astrology, because I've gotten a little bit of a taste from your content that you got started really early with astrology, and I find that very fascinating. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. So hello, everybody. My name is Katherine Wehler. I am a new paradigm business and soul coach. So like Vanessa said, I've been studying astrology for over 20 years because I had a crush on a boy, like the little Libra moon that I am. Little Libra moon in the fourth house. So I have been doing it ever since, and I've been doing it professionally now since I was 24. Funnily enough, also kind of relationship related. I did a reading for a friend of a friend, post a really bad breakup. And she was like, you should charge for this. And I thought, wow, what a novel idea. And I already had my first business at that point, which was a beauty business, which is also very successful. And I had kind of already started to use astrology with my team members and with, just other ladies that wanted to brand and market the same way that I was. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I worked as a stylist at Anthropology. And my boss at the time was like, this is better than my 6 years of therapy. Like this first 20 minutes, she was my first official paid client. And she was like, this is better than 6 years of therapy, this first 20 minutes. So it just grew and grew and grew. And that's where I find myself today, using it to mostly business and wealth coach, and also do some relationship coaching, manifestation. So yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's back up and tell me about this first crush, and then like how it all started.
Oh
like, why astrology? Like, how old are you?
I was 7 years old. I have the book right here. So this is how the story goes, right? I'm not making it up. Like, I'm dead serious when I'm telling this story. So this is how the story goes. I was a really avid reader when I was younger. I was kind of somewhat of a prodigy, and I would go to the bookstore every single week with my mom, and we would choose a new book. And one week I chose this book, right, which is like, as you can see, it's like an adult book on Greek mythology, not a kid's book.
I can't read the title.
It says Gods and Demigods, an Encyclopedia of Greek Mythology. Yeah. And there's like Athena and Apollo. Yeah. So anyways, so I started reading it, and I got super into it, and I studied Greek and Roman and Egyptian mythology. And then simultaneously, I had this little crush on a boy who's still my best guy friend to this day. So I tease him because I'm like, it's your fault that I do this for a living, because he makes fun of me. Like, he's one of those guys who's like, oh, is it my, Saggy, witty moon or something? And I'm like, no, you have a Capricorn moon. So anyways, but yeah, so, he was very kind. We were in a reading group together, and because we were very intelligent. And so we were in a reading group, just the two of us, reading Charlotte's Web. And when Charlotte died, I cried, and he comforted me. And I thought, I like this, sweet, funny, nice boy. So anyways, because I had a crush on him, I was reading through like, American Girl magazine or 17 or something like that. And it was the horoscopes, and it mentioned Venus. And I was like, oh my gosh, Venus, like, I know Venus, like, what is this stuff? And so again, the reason I got really into it is because of this crush, because I was like, are we compatible? Like, such a Libra moon. I'm like, are we, like, what is this new tool that I can use to find out if we're compatible? And so I would like tear out pages from the magazines and take them to the playground, and then tell my friends if they were compatible with their crushes. And it's just hilarious to me because, obviously it grew from there. But to this day, like, even the way that I teach business and wealth astrology is through the lens of synastry. It's through the lens of relationship astrology and attraction. So I don't know. That's just how I came into it.
I love that story. That is so freaking cute. So when that started, like, that sparked your whole, obsession, I guess, as well, with astrology, did it always stay consistent, or did you lose that part of yourself and then it came back, or just a constant thing for you?
It was pretty consistent. Like, even my best friend, she and I were talking about it. She's, we've known each other since we were 5 years old. She and I were talking about it the other day because someone asked her, like, oh, are you into astrology too? And she said, well, not as much as Casey, which is what they call me back home, Catherine Christine. She goes, not as much as Casey. She's like, back even in like middle school or high school, she would be reading like, oh, this is your moon sign. And like, this is, this thing and that thing. And so, it was kind of like an underlying thing always. But I was a professional actor before what I do now, and also a singer. And so that really took up like, all of my time, career-wise and professionally, leading up to college. Like, I really, really, really was serious about being an actor, being a performer. So astrology was always just something that I just, kind of did for fun in the background. It wasn't anything I took super seriously. And then my life just took a 180 in college. There was a tragedy at my school, which led to me moving to Austin, Texas. And I think the other important thing to note here is that I've channeled my whole life too. So I've always, spoken to angels and spirit guides, and I've been psychic, and I've had like psychic dreams, and I've been an oracle my whole life. So I had predicted that tragedy and no one had believed me. So it was a little bit of like a Cassandra wound. And because of that, I just kind of was like, I don't want anything to do with this. I mean, why am I receiving things if people aren't even going to listen to me? So I kind of had a come to Jesus moment, or I guess come to spirit guides moment. Well, I guess Jesus is one of my spirit guides, but I had like a come to spirit guides moment where in Austin, I just was going through such a difficult time, and I had kind of been like not as tapped into my intuition, not as tapped into, my love for astrology and stuff. And I was like sitting on the side of the road, no gas in my car. It was like pouring rain. Like it was just terrible. And I just like looked up at the sky and I was like, anyone help me. And then I started receiving the downloads the same way I did, when I was younger, again, like literally the next morning. And, one of those was just this like continued interest in astrology and starting to use astrology to business coach.
I love that. And I love that, our guides are always there for us and they're available if we just ask. And
literally.
Right? Yeah. And the fact that you too have experienced the coming and going of listening to that intuition and then being able to tap back into it. And that has helped you with the success that you've had now, right? So
absolutely.
When did you discover human design? Because I know that you also study human design and you incorporate that into your business as well, as at least your coaching. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. So by this point, I was doing the astrology thing professionally. I had officially started my business. All of the girls that I worked with at Anthropology were like my first clients for that. And one of the girls had been telling one of our like regular customers, oh, like that's Katherine. She does astrology, because we had like an astrology book in the store. So whenever someone would pick it up, like someone would automatically bring me over and be like, oh, like she actually does astrology and she really likes this book. And, so anyways, so this girl, she's checking out and she's getting her stuff. She goes, oh, you're the astrologer. And I said, yeah. And she goes, have you ever heard of human design? And I said, no, like, what's that? And she's like, well, it's kind of like astrology. Like astrology is a part of it, but not really. She's like, I heard about it on this podcast, and, I've kind of been exploring mine a little bit. And granted, this was in like this would have been 2018. So this was like before it like really blew up, like Jenna Zoe had kind of like just started to make it on podcasts, like, almost 30 and that kind of thing. And so I went and I like looked it up, and at first I was like, what is this alien language? Like I was like the martyr, and I was like, what? And I was like, okay, interesting. And then it was, I think just very shortly after that, that I was listening to a podcast, like almost 30, because I used to clean in the mornings at Anthropology, and I would take all of that time to just plug in and listen to like my little self-development or business podcasts or whatever. And and it was Jenna Zoe talking about it, and it really resonated. And I went back to it and re-looked at it, and I was like, and like the actual configuration of it, right? The body graph. And I was like, wait, I know this. Like, I know this from past lives, And so it was really interesting because like, yes, I learned it, but it also just kind of downloaded. Like, it was just kind of this like instant spark of remembering it. And it was just a really interesting process because obviously human design is an experiment. So you actually live it, right? It's not just like intellectually, understood, but you actually study it by living it. So then I started to really listen to my human design. I'm a 4/6 sacral Mani-Gen. So pretty easy to implement, right? Like, yes, no, and everything just started to click. And again, I started to incorporate it just ever so slightly, because I'm really big about integrity when it comes to coaching, when it comes to being a beginner, like, being honest about that and charging accordingly. And so I just kind of started to incorporate it into the astrology, and people really, really, really liked it, really responded to it. So I started taking it more seriously. And it was right about the time that I manifested my car. I was learning about being a non-specific manifester. And it just made so much sense to me that I was non-specific. And I manifested my car in a very non-specific sort of way. And I was like, okay, I need to teach this everywhere. Like, I need to actually go out and share this with the people. Then I started doing more like classes, and I did like a little course during the pandemic. And yeah, I love human design. It kind of fills in the gaps that astrology leaves in terms of the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I freaking love human design too. And it's funny, our conversations, I'm like, I just don't get astrology. I don't know why. And one of my really great friends, my big bestie, Chrissy Augustina, she's really into astrology as well.
Chrissy.
And she's like, she gets on that. She's like, you do know, you're just deciding to be confused. I'm like, oh, why are you using my stuff on me? But I find it fascinating. And when you said that, what is this alien language when it came to human design, that's how I kind of feel about astrology. So let's go back to astrology. If someone just has heard, because I didn't know this before, but I was always like, oh, I'm an Aquarius. I go read my Aquarius horoscope, but there's so many more layers to that. So if someone wanted to dive more into their chart, like what would be maybe the top 3 things that they should know about their chart so that it can help them make the shifts that they need to be able to manifest success, money, love, joy, all the things?
Yeah. So the first thing is exactly what you just said, which is that you're an Aquarius, but you go and you read the, horoscope for Aquarius. You actually want to be reading the horoscope for Cancer, because that is what is going to correspond with where things are falling in your houses, because you're a Cancer rising, right? So I think most people know their sun sign. Side note, nobody is a cusp. So if people are like, oh, I'm like a Virgo Leo cusp. No, you're not. You're either a 29-degree Leo or you're a 0-degree Virgo, which is why you need your exact birth time. So for people that are like, oh, I read for both Aries and Pisces, I'm like, no. Also, a lot of those horoscopes, like unless it actually is a horoscope where it's talking about the placement of the planets and it's talking about the houses, like pay attention to those, because those were written by an actual astrologer. But I used to work for a newspaper, and we would like literally just come up with the horoscopes. So if it's just one where it's like, Cancer, today your love life, blah, 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 and it doesn't really explain why, I would be a little wary, right? So I would know your rising sign. I would definitely know your moon sign, right? Your moon sign is your emotions. It's your inner world. It's your well-being. So therefore it's your wealth, right? It's the thing that makes life worth living, that makes life pleasurable. So I would definitely know your moon sign, because it's a very strong magnetic attractor in your chart. And similarly, I would know your Venus, especially for women. I would definitely need to know or want to know your Venus. Because your Venus, similar to the moon, is this divine feminine super attractor. So knowing the sign and the house placement of your Venus is key, especially for women, but for everybody when it comes to love, wealth, money, life satisfaction. It shows your values. It shows, what people find valuable in you. So you can really like crank up the dial on those things within your marketing, your messaging, that kind of thing. And then the final thing I would really recommend for people to know that most people don't, because it's not what every astrologer teaches, is I would know your pars of fortune. So or part of fortune or fortuna, it's all the same thing. They just go by different names. But I would definitely know your pars of fortune, because this is both your spiritual and your material wealth. And then there was one other that just popped in for me that I was like, oh, that's a really good one that people need to know, but I forgot. So I guess it wasn't as important, but those are the ones, that's where I would start. I would start working with a professional astrologer. If you've never done your astrology before, it's so much easier than DIYing. It's the difference between if you needed a whole page of Spanish translated and you don't speak Spanish, like you would go hire a translator. You wouldn't try to learn an entire language just to translate one page. So I would definitely recommend you work with someone. It doesn't have to be me, but work with someone who you resonate with and who, has a good background and has good testimonials and stuff. And astrology can be applied to whatever. So that's what I would start to look at for people who are probably your listeners who, like want to make money, want to have love in their lives, like probably have a business, right? But if we were looking at health, we would look at something completely different and so on and so on.
Okay, that's good to know. It's actually, I did not know about the rising. I've heard of it, but I didn't know how significant it was until you and I had our reading. Excuse me. And choking on saliva here. And I was like, oh my gosh, like all the things that I kept reading about Aquarius, I'm like, but this is just like a tiny part of like who I am. And this makes so much more sense. My Cancer rising, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I know that it's like what we talked about with human design. I feel like there's some experimentation to do as well. And applying it. It's not just learning it, but like playing with the energy of the Cancer rising, of like what does that mean for me? And how can I shift my energy into that? Because I'm very much Aquarius, like very nerdy. Like, and I also like the Chinese zodiac. And so I'm a dog in the Chinese zodiac. And I find that like, are you? I thought, oh my gosh, are we like 12 years apart? We must be about 12 years apart then. Okay.
Yeah, I think we are, but I'm the dog as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I noticed that like the dog is like the loyal, and I feel like there's some similar traits in astrology as well. So, anyways, thank you for that. I think it's very, very fascinating. Like, it's not just what your sun sign is, but it's like the other parts of it. Can you give me an example of maybe some way you helped someone? Like, they came to you. And what were the results they were able to have because you've done reading?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, how much time do we have?
What's your favorite story then?
What's my favorite story? Well, I think my absolute favorite story in business is this. And we used both her astrology and her human design for it. I have two like top favorite stories. One is business and one is not. So the first one is business. She came to me. She was actually a referral, and she was one of my very first business coaching clients because I had been doing a lot of like personal manifestation, soul rediscovery type stuff. And I had worked with her assistant, and she recommended me to her boss, basically. And this woman had already been on like Good Morning America. She had like the blue check on Instagram when that like meant more than it does now, because now we can just get one. But she had earned the blue check on Instagram. Like she had, hundreds of thousands of followers. She had been featured in magazines. Like she was a big deal, right? Just lovely, lovely, lovely woman. And she came to me and she was like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to move forward. Like she had a bunch of questions, and I was, a brand new baby business coach. And I was like, I'm exactly the person to help you, like exactly the person to help you in exactly this. And I was like, I know exactly how this is going to go. I'm really excited, not just for you, but also for your clients. And so she had a goal of making 100K on her launch. And basically throughout the launch with all of our coaching, she was like a projector. So she learned about being a projector. She was like a sixth line. So she learned about, that. She learned about her astrology and everything too. And the way that I approach business astrology. And by the end of her launch, she had been in a place where she was just unsatisfied. She was like, I have all the things going for me. And yet I'm just not happy. I feel like it's never enough. Like, and by the end of her launch, it was really wonderful because she, through our work, had decided that she wanted to offer a scholarship to women of color. She was a white woman, and this was following, the huge wave of Black Lives Matter back a few years ago. And so she was like, I really want to offer, a scholarship to women of color because I have so many women writing me saying they want to work with me, but they can't afford it, but they know that this would change their lives. And so she put out like a scholarship form, and she had so many applicants that touched her heart. She approved every single one of them. So she let in all of these women into her program. Plus she had an incredible launch of paid clients. And she wrote me and she was like, this is like one of the most profound business lessons I have ever learned. She's like, I am so excited for the next launch. I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing and using my platform the way I'm meant to be using it. Right. And she's like, I'm like forever grateful to you for this. Mm-hmm. So it was just a really, really special one because it was that new paradigm leadership of, not just the focus on ourselves, but the focus on how can I use my platform as, this catalyst of change, right? How can I be that change that I want to see in the world? And then also too, my second one was non-business. And it was someone who was the brother of one of my clients. And he came to me and he, had been doing, he had been in the recovery community, very like active and very present in the recovery community for many years. And he had a 12th house stellium. And I just had a long talk with him about how like his previous addiction and everything was not his fault and all these things. And he didn't tell me anything about his life. Like I was just talking to him about all of this. And he was just in tears. He was like, this is what I've needed to hear my entire life, to know that nothing is wrong with me and that I'm on the path and that I was able to get to this place where now I can help people and people don't have to repeat these cycles of addiction. We can get it early and I can help these kids, and just was really meaningful.
I thought that because it's, both of these stories are about making an impact. And sometimes I know in my experience, I've had people, especially being in the South, people think human design is so woo-woo, it's witchy and, and all those things. And what I really have found is that these tools are really about self-discovery and permission to be who you were born to be and live out your purpose, because this helps you create a greater impact. Yep. And so you're just telling me right now, if you, yes, it's about the business, yes, it's about this, but what it does later, the ripple effect that it has on everyone in this world. I really love those two stories. Thank you for sharing both of those.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's what I'm always saying that new paradigm and new paradigm leadership is, right? It's like, it's finding that individual shape and form of your puzzle piece so that you can contribute to that larger puzzle. And I love both of these cases because, while these folks are altruistic in their own right, these weren't necessarily instances where they were approaching it from a place of like, okay, I'm going to try to be altruistic. Like that idea to do the scholarship and everything just downloaded to my client. She was like, this is how I'm meant to move forward. This is my next step, using all of our methods and stuff. It's what came to her. And I'm so happy that, when we step into our heart's desire, when we listen to what is right for us uniquely, it automatically, whether it's like what we're having for breakfast or it's a bigger download, like something like that, right? Or a bigger next step, it automatically impacts the collective in a really beautiful, loving way, and that's how we contribute to each other.
Oh, I love that. And okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to talk about Manifestation Lab, because I feel like this is a great time to bring this in and talk about your part in it And I'm getting chills right now just thinking about this, but it's interesting because I study and I coach using neurolinguistic programming. So I do a lot of time techniques of conscious reprogramming, EFT, things like that, in my group program, the Profitable CEO Accelerator, and my one-on-one clients. And one of the things that I talk about is that sometimes we go, or all the time, we go on autopilot and we skip things, we miss things, and there's just information that we miss. Some of it's important, some of it is maybe purposely not missing. It's to get out of our way. But one thing that happened last year was I shared one of your posts into the Facebook group. And I don't even remember sharing it, but I intentionally shared it because it was a really beautiful message. I don't remember what it is now, but 2 weeks before I invited you, I guess it was, no. 2 weeks after I invited you into this collaboration and manifestation lab, that popped up that I shared it. And it was just kind of like, oh my gosh, it was confirmation that this has been in the works for quite a while, although subconsciously I didn't know, or subconsciously I did know, consciously I did not know. Do you know what I mean? And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is like meant to be. And you had mentioned as well that you were manifesting some kind of container like this. And so tell me a little bit about your part and why you're so excited about it, and maybe what you see in the future for Manifestation Lab and the members.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Just to kind of back it up a little bit too, just really briefly, I really do think it was so cool that we were manifesting each other because, I've been doing astrology for 20 years. I've been doing human design for over 6 now. And I ran a very successful mastermind, but that came to its close, right? It just came to a natural, okay, this is complete and something else is coming. And my guides were kind of like, you're not meant to create it. It's just going to come to you. And basically I had been looking for someone to partner with when it came to the human design piece, because human design is so, what's the right word for it? Complex. There's so much to cover, even just in the human design. And then if you're doing both human design and astrology, that's a lot, right? And lately, I started my Saturn return last year. My Saturn return is actually what led to me writing that post. That is the one that you had reposted, right? And I've just been feeling through my Saturn return, I adore human design. I still want to keep, guiding with it and teaching and coaching with it. But I also really, really, really want to lean into the astrology, when it comes to my piece. So I've been manifesting okay, what's a container where I could contribute the astrological piece and someone else could go, a little heavier on the human design, right? And could kind of more lead that piece. And you popped up. So I'm so excited. And I mean, even just our first month has been so fun. Our little pre-launch has been so fun. I'm so honored to be doing the Astro Forecast. So every single month, my contribution is that I go over the entire astrology forecast for all of the major transits that you need to know. And we just go in depth into how you can work with it, what you might expect, where it's happening in your chart, and how it applies to what we're also working with the human design that month as well, right? And the sort of challenges or things that Vanessa has come up with so brilliantly. And I just love it. I'm really excited. I'm excited for this new container. I'm excited for our collaboration. We're both these beautiful, Cancer risings with just so much love to offer and just so much wisdom, and I feel between the two of us, there's just this fun and play and brilliance. And it's just a match made in heaven, honestly.
Yeah, I love it too, because I feel I have my business, and yes, this is part of my business, but this is my playground. If you want to come play with me here, because the weekly challenges that come out, I mean, they're so to me, I made this month really dorky, really gamifying it, and it was magical wizardy things like that, and it's just been fun, because when I first launched this last year, It was just a beta round, and it was, it was going to be like a school, like basically a big library. And what I found within the first 60 days, people were like, whoa, this is so much. So now it's like, okay, it's not about learning it too much because you have to apply it in order for it to sink in. And so I just love how we're just coming together to play with that energy. And then you're bringing in the astrology part to do like a check-in and like, okay, well, this was like your snapshot of when you were born, but this is what's happening as you evolve and, all these things change in our environment, in our world, etc. So I just love the way these two things work together. And I love that you're there in the group to do a little check-in. Like you did a check-in a few days ago, like how is everyone doing? Because that's important in these kind of containers that people will go to a call or they'll consume the content and then it goes through when you're out the other, or maybe they just, they need to just have that support so that they're making sure that to me, I want to make sure that they're receiving that value by, staying on track or, playing with it with the energy consistently. And so I love that you're there to support everyone as well. And the fact that human design, so it's not, you bring a different perspective. If for some reason I see something one way. So I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, one of my favorite sayings, which is attributed to JP Morgan was, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And I feel the same way with human design too. I feel like these are both systems that, again, like you were saying, a place to play, a place to experiment, a place to do what my guides call study versus just learning, right? Because there's like the intellectual application and then there's the actual like real world, tangible, physical next steps. Here's how you can play with that energy. And again, like you and I are both so good at that part and especially collaborating on that part. And I'll say too, I normally like hate a challenge. Like I've always told people, I'm like, I hate when people run like 5-day challenges and stuff, but there's something about the way Vanessa does it that it's fun. It's playful. Like it's not, I don't know. Like I just like, I really enjoy the way that you facilitate that piece. And it just, to me, is a very, very unique place, just again, like to play, to try things, to like, it's right in the name, it's Manifestation Lab, right? It's like taking our little like mad scientist, mad genius brains and, saying like, go forth and try things, don't just learn it, but actually like try it in your life, because that's where the real fun comes in both human design and astrology.
Yes, it's like experimenting, exploring, just the fun. And speaking of which, before we hopped on the call, I was working on June's challenge content because it's all about trusting your authority. And what I added this month were somatic exercises for each of the authorities. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Just different ways to like move. Because it's not just the sacral authorities that can move to really tap into their authority. It's like other people, other authorities that can use different variances of somatic work. So I'm super excited about that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so before we wrap up, if someone wanted to work with you, outside of Manifestation Lab, if they wanted to get a reading, how can they reach you?
Yeah, well, if you're already in Manifestation Lab, then you know where I'm hanging out. So you could just DM me. But for everyone else who's kind of more new to my world, I am Katherine Wehler everywhere. My name, I'm literally the only person in the world with my name. So it's very, very, very easy to find me. That's Katherine, Katherine, last name Wehler. I know it's German and it's a little weird. Wehler, Katherine Christine Wehler on Facebook. But yeah, I'm Katherine _Wehler on Instagram, Katherine Wehler on TikTok. And my website is katherinewehler.com. And if you go on the website, then you will get, or you can sign up for the New Paradigm Wealth Activation Meditation and also monthly astrology forecasts delivered to your inbox that, again, then we're going to be going in depth with and actually playing with in the Manny Lab. So yeah, you can find all of my information, everything on there. Feel free to reach out either through email or DM. I'm happy to help find a good fit for a reading too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And one last question that I always ask everyone that's on my podcast.
Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. Okay, so so again, I'm going through my Saturn return. My Saturn return is in Pisces in the ninth house, which in and of itself is just like it's study time, right? So I'm reading tons of books. I just read one, like literally I spent all day yesterday because what I'm doing now is Spotify has audiobooks for free as part of a premium membership. And you can listen at like 1.5 or 2 times speed because I'm an Aries and everything is too slow for me. So I listened to a whole audiobook yesterday from like my absolute idol, who's a Cancer sun, actually an Aries moon, Tosh Oakley. She just wrote a book called Excessively Obsessed, and it is a must. Like a must for any business owner, especially for women, especially for people who are more new to it too. But like I've been in business for 7 years and I got a lot out of it. Like it's just fabulous. And then I also just today started reading, I forget the name of it, but it is from Osea, which is actually like a skincare brand that I really love. And it's on the vagus nerve. It's a book on the vagus nerve. So yeah, so that's my next one.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for those recommendations. And thank you for being here. And if you want to come hang out with us in Manifestation Lab, make sure that you check out the show notes so you can sign up and come play with us. All right. We'll catch you next time on the next episode of The Aligned Businesswoman. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Aligned Businesswoman podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Ann Miller, and I'm so excited to share some goodies with you. Head over to the show notes so you can grab your free gift and make sure to leave a review and join me inside the Aligned Businesswoman Facebook group. Until next week, bye-bye, my love.